lost its potency.
It's lost its potency. I'm recording this. I've learned some techniques how to control these Zoom, like Alt-R. I turned that on so you can start recording and stuff, and Alt-Share. Let me see if I can do that. Alt-S, I believe. Okay, all right, let's see here. There. Share. Chapter 5. Can you see? I can see.
We're on 15, right?
Yeah, 15.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just ripping through the Nectar of Devotion because they're really short chapters. I got done reading the Chaitanya Charitamrita, and those are like anywhere from 2 to 4 hours long each chapter, but the most of the chapters from the Nectar of Devotion are only like 15 or 20 minutes long, so I can do like 5 or 6 or 7 chapters a day. Gotta love Rupa Goswami, I tell you. He knows the inside scoop of everything. I guess I'll start reading here, and we'll just take turns every week, every day. Text 15. Nadate kayaschit papam nachaiva sukritim bibu agne nena vritam gyanam tena muyanti jantava. Synonyms: never adate accepts kayachit, anyone's papam sin, nor cha also eva certainly sukritam, pious activities, vibhu, the Supreme Lord, agnanena, by ignorance, avritam, covered, gyanam, knowledge, tena, by that, muyanti, are bewildered, jantava, the living entities. Translation: nor does the Supreme Lord assume anyone's sinful or pious activities. The embodied beings, however, are bewildered because of the ignorance which covers their real knowledge. Purport: the Sanskrit word vibhu means the Supreme Lord who is full of unlimited knowledge, riches, strength, fame, beauty, and renunciation. He's always satisfied in himself, undisturbed by sinful or pious activities. He does not create a particular situation for any living entity, but the living entity, bewildered by ignorance, desires to be put into certain conditions of life, and thereby his chain of action and reaction begins. The living entity is, by superior nature, full of knowledge. Nonetheless, he is prone to be influenced by ignorance due to his limited power. The Lord is omnipotent, but the living entity is not. The Lord is vibhu, or omniscient, but the living entity is anu, or atomic. Because he is a living soul, he has the capacity to desire by his free will. Such desires fulfilled only by the omnipotent Lord. And so, when the living entity is bewildered in his desires, the Lord allows him to fulfill those desires, but the Lord is never responsible for the actions and reactions of the particular situation which may be desired. Being in a bewildered condition, therefore, the embodied soul identifies himself with the circumstantial material body and becomes subjected to the temporary misery and happiness of life. The Lord is the constant companion of the living entity as Paramatma, or the supersoul, and therefore he can understand the desires of the individual soul as one can smell the flavor of a flower by being near it. Desire is a subtle form of conditioning for the living entity. The Lord fulfills his desire as he deserves. Man proposes and God disposes. The individual is not, therefore, omnipotent in fulfilling his desires. The Lord, however, can fulfill all desires, and the Lord, being neutral to everyone, does not interfere with the desires of the minute, independent living entities. However, when one desires Krishna, the Lord takes special care and encourages one to desire in such a way that one can attain to him and be eternally happy. The Vedic hymns therefore declare, Esha uhiesha sadhu karma karyanti tam yam ebyo lekebya unini sate esa ueveshadu karma karyanti yam adho ninisate. The Lord engages the living entity in pious activities so that he may be elevated. The Lord engages him in impious activities so that he may go to hell. Kṛṣṇa Upanishad 3.8. I'm just going to read the rest of this kind of line. I didn't realize I was going on past this, but Arjuna Janturaniso Yam Atmana Shuka Dukayo Ishvara Prarito Gachet Swargam Vasava Brahmevacha. The living entity is completely dependent in his distress and happiness. By the will of the Supreme, he can go to heaven or hell as a cloud is driven by the air, end quote. Therefore, the embodied soul, by his immemorial desire to avoid Kṛṣṇa consciousness, causes his own bewilderment. Consequently, although he is constitutionally eternal, blissful, and cognizant, due to the littleness of his existence, he forgets his constitutional position of service to the Lord and is thus entrapped by nescience. And under the spell of ignorance, the living entity claims that the Lord is responsible for his conditional existence. The Vedanta Sutra 2.134 also confirms this. Vaishamya nargrinye na shapek shatvat tatahi darsayati. The Lord neither hates nor likes anyone, although he appears to, end quote. So, people blame Kṛṣṇa for their situation in life, and that's simply due to their, what does it say? It says,
Immemorial desire.
they blame Kṛṣṇa under the spell of ignorance. They don't know why they're in that situation, but they just blame God, But actually, they say, well, maybe somebody would object. Okay, well, Kṛṣṇa is letting me do this by my own, I might have stupid plans, but he's allowing me to fulfill my desires. Why doesn't he stop me? Kṛṣṇa allows everyone to fulfill their desires according to their desires. It's like a child, he wants to put his hand in the fan, and the Lord will give them a taste of some pain, just like if a child wants to put a hand in the fan, the parent won't let him, but the parent may turn the fan off and then it's still spinning, but the child will put his finger in the fan and he'll get hurt, but he won't be injured. So that's the material world. Kṛṣṇa will allow you to, to do your nonsense, but you're going to have to suffer a reaction for it. And you can't blame Kṛṣṇa for doing that. He's the most kind Lord. So you can't really, it's your own doing. So you have to take responsibility. But if you don't know why you're suffering, then you should ask the question, why am I suffering? What caused this? And how can I get out of it? That's intelligence. That's the beginning of intelligence. Otherwise, you're just going to be caught up in your spell of ignorance, and it's an endless cycle. You'll always be committing sinful activities and repeating your own fruitive activities for your own sense gratification. And unless you surrender to Kṛṣṇa, you'll never get out of it. Unless you surrender to devotees and hear from them constantly about Kṛṣṇa consciousness, only then will you actually, get out of this vicious cycle of, everybody's playing the blame game. Nobody likes to take responsibility, but it's actually the responsibility of the individual living entity. And Kṛṣṇa, will help you get out of it, but you just have to surrender. That's, because you can't get out of it yourself. The material energy is very, very strong, and you can't figure out. It's like a maze. You can't figure out how to get out of it, because Maya is always like chasing you down the block. She's like behind you the whole way, and also she's like halfway behind the street corner too. So it's very difficult to get away from Maya. Go ahead and read this one.
Sure. Text 16. Yanena tu tad ajnanam yesham nashitam atmana tesham aditya vaj jnanam prakyashati tat param. Synonyms. Yanena, by knowledge. 2, but. Tat, that. Ajnanam, nescience. Yesham, whose. Nashitam is destroyed. Atmana, of the living entity. Tesham, there. Adityavat, like the rising sun. Yanam, knowledge. Prakashyati, discloses. Tat Param, Kṛṣṇa Consciousness. Translation. When, however, one is enlightened with the knowledge by which nescience is destroyed, then his knowledge reveals everything as the sun lights up everything in the daytime. Purport. Those who have forgotten Krishna must certainly be bewildered, but those who are in Kṛṣṇa consciousness are not bewildered at all. It is stated in the Bhagavad-gītā, Sarvam Yana Lavena Nani Ki Sarva Karmani, and Nahi Yanena Sarusham. Knowledge is always highly esteemed. And what is that knowledge? Perfect knowledge is achieved when one surrenders unto Krishna, as is said in the 7th chapter, 19th verse. Ahunam Janmanam Anti Jnanavan Mam Prapadayate. After passing through many, many births, when one perfect in knowledge surrenders unto Krishna, or when one attains Kṛṣṇa consciousness, then everything is revealed to him, as everything is revealed by the sun in the daytime. The living entity is bewildered in so many ways. For instance, when he unceremoniously thinks himself God, he actually falls into the last snare of nescience. If a living entity is God, then how can he become bewildered by nescience? Does God become bewildered by nescience? If so, then nescience or Satan is greater than God. Real knowledge can be obtained from a person who is in perfect Kṛṣṇa consciousness. Therefore, one has to seek out such a bona fide spiritual master and, under him, learn what Kṛṣṇa consciousness is. For Kṛṣṇa consciousness will certainly drive away all nescience as the sun drives away darkness. Even though a person may be in full knowledge that he is not this body, but is transcendental to the body, he still may not be able to discriminate between the soul and the supersoul. However, he can know everything well if he cares to take shelter of the perfect, bona fide Kṛṣṇa conscious spiritual master. One can know God and one's relationship with God only when one actually meets a representative of God. A representative of God never claims that he is God, although he is paid all the respects ordinarily paid to God because he has knowledge of God. One has to learn the distinction between God and the living entity. Lord Sri Krishna therefore stated in the 2nd chapter, 2:12, that every living being is individual and that the Lord is also individual. They were all individuals in the past, they are individuals at present, and they will continue to be individuals in the future, even after liberation. At night, we see everything as one in the darkness, but in day, when the sun is up, we see everything in its real identity. Identity with individuality and spiritual life is real knowledge.
Yeah, I like this part where it says, for instance, when he unceremoniously thinks himself God, he actually falls into the last snare of nescience. If a living entity is God, how can he be bewildered by nescience? That's what the Mayavadis can't answer that question, like that blues album I was actually showing you yesterday by David Pandit, like a dog without a master. One of the verses of it goes, you say, we're all God, God is one, we're all God. Ain't it funny how God seems to work so hard? If you were the master and the world was your drawing board, how could you be an illusion? Illusion must be your Lord. I love that song. Text 17. Tad buddhayas tadatmanas tanishtas tat parayana gachanti apunaravritam jnana nidutta kalmasa. Synonyms. Tat buddhaya, those whose intelligence is always in the Supreme. Tat atmana, those whose minds are always in the Supreme. Tat nishta, those whose faith is only meant for the Supreme. Tat parayana, who have completely taken shelter of him. Gachanti, go. Apuna avritam, to liberation, gyan, by knowledge. Nirduta, cleansed. Kalmasha, misgivings. Translation. When one's intelligence, mind, faith, and refuge are all fixed in the Supreme, then one becomes fully cleansed of misgivings through complete knowledge and thus proceeds straight on the path of liberation. Purport. The supreme transcendental truth is Lord Krishna. The whole Bhagavad-gītā centers around the declaration that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is a version of all Vedic literature. Paratattva means the supreme reality, who is understood by the knowers of the Supreme as Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. Bhagavan, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the last word in the Absolute. There is nothing more than that. The Lord says, Mata Paratanam Nanyat Kṛṣṇasti Dhananjaya. Impersonal Brahman is also supported by Krishna. Brahmano hi pratishthitam. Therefore, in all ways, Krishna is the supreme reality, one whose mind, intelligence, faith, and refuge are always in Krishna, or in other words, one who is fully in Kṛṣṇa consciousness, is undoubtedly washed clean of all misgivings and is perfect in perfect knowledge in everything concerning transcendence. A Kṛṣṇa conscious person can thoroughly understand that there is duality, simultaneous identity and individuality in Krishna, and equipped with such transcendental knowledge, one can make steady progress on the path of liberation. That's you can only actually go into the transcendental state of being always with the Supreme if you're completely cleansed of all material desires. You can't enter into Mathura, actually, unless you're free from all material desires, fruitive activity, speculation, like that. But, Mathura is a very special place, though. If you go there, especially during Kartik, October, November, if you go to Mathura, even if you have material desires, you will be cleansed of so much, because that month is so dear to Krishna. That's why, the devotees go to Vrindavan every year and they stay there for the whole month, because it's a very potent place. And Krishna is very dear to the month of Kartik is very dear to Krishna, and Krishna's month of Damodar is very dear to the devotees as well. So it's a very powerful situation. Yeah, one should always observe ceremonies and auspicious occasions like that, like the month of Kartik, Janmashtami, all these different things should be observed. These are various transcendental activities that devotees can partake in to advance in Kṛṣṇa consciousness very rapidly. Go ahead.
Text 18. Vidya Vinaya Sampane Ramane Gavi Hastini Shuni Chaivasva Pakecha Pandita Sama Darshina. Synonyms: Vidya, with education, Vinaya, and gentleness, Sampane, fully equipped, Ramane, in the Brahmana, Gavi, in the cow, Hastini, in the elephant, Shuni, in the dog, Cha, and Eva, certainly, Svapake, in the dog eater, the outcast, Cha, respectively, Pandita, those who are wise, Samadarshina, who see with equal vision. The humble sages, by virtue of true knowledge, see with equal vision a learned and gentle Brahmin, a cow, an elephant, a dog, and a dog eater, outcast. Purport. A Kṛṣṇa conscious person does not make any distinction between species or castes. Brahmana and the outcast may be different from the social point of view, or a dog, a cow, and an elephant may be different from the point of view of species, but these differences of body are meaningless from the viewpoint of a learned transcendentalist. This is due to their relationship to the Supreme. The Supreme Lord, by his plenary portion as Paramatma, is present in everyone's heart. Such an understanding of the Supreme is real knowledge. As far as the bodies are concerned, in different castes or different species of life, the Lord is equally kind to everyone because he treats every living being as a friend, yet maintains himself as Paramatma, regardless of the circumstances of the living entities. The Lord, as Paramatma, is present both in the outcast and in the Brahmana, although the body of the Brahmana and that of an outcast are not the same. The bodies are material productions of different modes of material nature, but the soul and the supersoul within the body are of the same spiritual quality. The similarity in the quality of the soul and the supersoul, however, does not make them equal in quantity. The individual soul is present only in that particular body, whereas the Paramatma is present in each and every body. A Kṛṣṇa conscious person has full knowledge of this, and therefore he is truly learned and has equal vision. The similar characteristics of the soul and the supersoul are that they are both conscious, eternal, and blissful. But the difference is that the individual soul is conscious within the limited jurisdiction of the body, whereas the super soul is conscious of all bodies. The super soul is present in all bodies without distinction.
Yeah, this is an important verse. It's actually if people realize this, there would be no more envy in the material world. You know, we're envious of other living entities because they're different. You know, somebody's black, somebody's white, somebody's an animal. You know, the only reason people kill animals and eat them is because they're envious, and they want to treat all these living entities as you know, objects of their own sense gratification, and they don't understand that each living entity is just like him. An animal cries when it's cut. It feels affection for its young. There's so many different similarities between these between these living entities, and that, you know, some so-called religious people think that animals have no soul. The animals have a soul. You know, it just says, like, you know, to just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master, inquire from him submissively and render service unto him. Self-realized soul can impart knowledge into you because he has seen the truth. And what is that truth? The truth is that all living beings are but part of me, they're in me, and they're mine. In other words, everyone is part and parcel of Kṛṣṇa, and they're all equal in quality with Kṛṣṇa. And so each living entity is actually very worshipable. And so you shouldn't ever mistreat any kind of living entity. You know, like the story of Magrari the hunter. You ever heard of that story, Magrari? He's in the Bhagavad-gītā. Who's a hunter who was like half killing animals, letting him suffer on the forest floor. And Narada Muni came by, you know, he just happened to be there. He saw all these animals lying there writhing in pain. And he saw the hunter and he said, "Why are you doing this? Why don't you kill them completely?" And he said, "Well, my father taught me to do this, and I kind of enjoy all these other living entities suffering like this." He said, "Well, if you do this, you should just kill them completely and don't let them suffer. That's cruel." And so, you know, Narada Muni told him, you know, that if you keep doing this, you're going to have to suffer in the same way that these animals are suffering. He showed them, actually, Narada Muni showed him that each one of these living entities are going to come back and kill you and make you suffer, you know, because that's karma, you know. And so when he saw that, you know, through the mystic vision of Narada Muni, he actually saw, I said, "Oh my God, you know, I've been doing this a long time, you know, how am I going to get out of this?" And so, you know, okay, Narada Muni, you know, told him, okay, if you want to get out of it, then throw away your bow and arrow and, you know, start worshiping this Tulsi and chant this mantra. And so he threw away his bow and arrow, and he did as he was told. And a few months later, Narada came out with his friend Angira Rishi, and the hunter was like running to see them because he was so excited that they came back. And but he couldn't move very quickly because he had to. He didn't want to step on any ants. There were some ants in the path, and he was so careful. He brushed away the ants before he would put a step. So that's the nature of devotional service. Once you realize that every single living entity has a soul, and you know that is part and parcel of Kṛṣṇa, is a temple of God within their heart, the Paramatma, then you know you will be respectful to every living entity. And so that's the difference between a devotee and a non-devotee. A non-devotee is envious of all other living entities and wants to use every living entity for his own purposes. But a devotee respects every single living entity and treats him as they would treat himself, which is the golden rule. So who's reading now? Did I read that? I forget.
I think I did.
Oh, okay. I'm getting old. I think I'm suffering from onset dementia. I just saw this. I realize I'm old, you know, sometimes when I see these, like, you know, things that I used to do when I was a kid, and I still like it. Like I saw this post about Neil Young. Neil Young, you're familiar with Neil Young? You're not too young to know about that. So, Neil Young, he's an old curmudgeon, I used to play Neil Young when I was in the coffee houses back in the 70s. I wasn't into disco or anything like that. I was into Neil Young. I love Neil Young. And so now he's an old curmudgeon, and he just pulled all his stuff from Spotify because he didn't like Joe Rogan. He's like a radical. He wrote Tin Soldiers and Nixon Coming. Ohio. He wrote that song. In 2006, he was an anti-war activist, and now he just didn't like it that they're putting all this nonsense on Spotify. This Joe Rogan asshole. It's like putting all this misinformation. He has millions of followers. And so he just said, okay, you can have Joe Rogan, or you can have me. He told Spotify. And so they just pulled it. They pulled Neil Young's own music off of Spotify. So that's why I like him. When I grow up, I want to be an old curmudgeon, like Neil Young. And then I look in the mirror and I think, oh, wait, I am already a old curmudgeon. But that's what it's kind of like, that's who I want to be. I want to be somebody who doesn't take any shit from anybody and doesn't back down. And they'll say what is this he stands for. David Letterman was like that too. He wouldn't take anything from anybody. He would just like, it's kind of nice when you're old too, because you get to say whatever you want to say and get away with it, And Letterman would say, look, if you don't like Neil Young, there's something wrong with you. But that was kind of like an enlivening thing for me to see today. It just came out in the Washington Post today that he won that battle. So he's putting his money where his mouth is, because they make money on that. So, but if you believe in something, you should back it up with your words and not just like use something for your own. Now he's got enough money; he'll be all right. Don't worry about him. But I like that. I like that kind of a mentality. Why don't you go ahead and read this one here, because I'm talking too much.
Text 19. Ahaiva tayer jita sargo yesham samye stitam manam nirdosham hi saman brahman tasmad brahmani te stita. Synonyms. Iha, in this life, eva, certainly, tai, by them, jita, conquered, sarga, birth and death, yesham, whose, samye, in equanimity, stitam, situated, mana, mind, nirdosham, flawless, he, certainly, samam, in equanimity, Brahma, like the supreme, tasmat, therefore, Brahmani, in the supreme, te, they, stita, are situated. Translation. Those whose minds are established in sameness and equanimity have already conquered the conditions of birth and death. They are flawless like Brahman, and thus they are already situated in Brahman. Purport. Equanimity of mind, as mentioned above, is a sign of self-realization. Those who have actually attained to such a stage should be considered to have conquered material conditions, specifically birth and death. As long as one identifies with the body, he is considered a conditioned soul, but as soon as he is elevated to the stage of equanimity through realization of self, he is liberated from conditional life. In other words, he is no longer subject to take birth in the material world, but can enter into the spiritual sky after his death. The Lord is flawless because he is without attraction or hatred. Similarly, when a living entity is without attraction or hatred, he also becomes flawless and eligible to enter into the spiritual sky. Such persons are considered already liberated, and their symptoms are described below.
Yeah, that's an important point. When you're without attraction or hatred, the only reason we become attracted to something, or we like something, or we don't like something, it's just based on our own mind. It's not really, doesn't have anything to do with Krishna. So Krishna is equipoised, and so a devotee also has to rise himself to that transcendental platform. It says in the Srimad Bhagavatam in the 20th chapter I think the 11th canto. It's called Jnana Yoga. The second verse is like he tells Uddhava, that's part of the Bhagavad-gītā. That's like a more in-depth Bhagavad-gītā. Krishna is explained just before he left the world to his dear devotee Uddhava. He explained to him, the principles of, same thing, Bhagavad-gītā, but it's more in detail. And he says, you shouldn't judge anybody, like this person is rich and so I like him, or this person is poor and I don't like him. You shouldn't base any of your judgment on the material conditions of a living entity. You shouldn't be attracted to something or hate something just based on your own mind. But you should realize that all living entities are just part of they're being controlled by the modes of nature. And so therefore you should think of it in that terms. And Krishna is in charge of the modes of nature. And so therefore you shouldn't have any kind of opinion about anybody. But you have to act on behalf of Krishna and try to elevate all these conditioned souls and unite them. Like he was saying that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, he commented on that verse. It's one of my favorite verses in the Bhagavatam because it's just so, it kind of shows the difference between those who are engaged in separating material distinctions of hate and attraction and repulsion and attraction like that, and dividing people. He said that an envious person or even a third-class devotee will try to separate this person from that person, and they'll say, well, these are my friends and these are my enemies, and they'll try to separate people. But we should try to actually, based on the holy name, we should try to get everyone together under the banner of the holy name and try to unite everyone in Kṛṣṇa consciousness. Don't be envious. In other words, don't have attraction and hatred, because if you think of somebody as being, like laudable because of their material qualities, or you think somebody's disgusting just because you don't like the way they look, or you don't like the way they act, all these considerations are just material. And if you think like that and are starting to divide people like according to your likes and dislikes, it just causes a disturbance in your devotional service. And so you can't think like that. You have to actually understand everything is under the auspices of Krishna, and all these living entities are acting in such in their own bewildered state. But you can't judge anybody. Krishna is the ultimate judge. You just have to see everyone in relation to Krishna and try to elevate them by serving Krishna. And one who tries to serve Krishna by preaching Kṛṣṇa consciousness, Bhagavad-gītā, to someone, you become a confidential servant of Krishna, and then you become very dear to Krishna as well. And he gives you more and more power to transmit this message. So that's a really good point, attraction and hatred. All this duality that we're thinking is just illusion. This is good, this is bad, victory or defeat. None of these things are actually consequential. The only consequential thing is our relationship with Krishna, and that's the only thing we should be focused on, nothing else at all. Go ahead and read text 20.
Naprayurshit priyam prapyam nadvijet prapya chapriyam stira buddhir as mudho brahmavid brahmani stita. Synonyms: na, never; prayurshit, rejoices; priyam, the pleasant; prapya, achieving; na, does not; udvijet, become agitated; prapya, obtaining; cha, also; apriyam, the unpleasant; sthira buddhi, self-intelligent; asmudha, unbewildered; brahmavit, one who knows the Supreme perfectly; brahmani, in the transcendence; sthita, situated. Translation: a person who neither rejoices upon achieving something pleasant nor laments upon obtaining something unpleasant, who is self-intelligent, who is unbewildered, and who knows the science of God, is already situated in transcendence. Purport: the symptoms of the self-realized person are given herein. The first symptom is that he is not illusioned by the false identification of the body with his true self. He knows perfectly well that he is not this body, but is the fragmental portion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is therefore not joyful in achieving something, nor does he lament in losing anything which is related to this body. His steadiness of mind is called sthira buddhi, or self-intelligence. He is therefore never bewildered by mistaking the gross body for the soul, nor does he accept the body as permanent and disregard the existence of the soul. This knowledge elevates him to the station of knowing the complete science of the absolute truth, namely Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. He thus knows his constitutional position perfectly well, without falsely trying to become one with the Supreme in all respects. This is called Brahman realization, or self-realization. Such steady consciousness is called Kṛṣṇa Consciousness.
Yeah. Hankering and lamentation. It's just like a football field or football game, you're kicked by one thing, hankering, and then you lament when you don't get it. Let's see here. We're almost time to stop here. But it's like a sports. You get so joyful when you win, and then you get like really bummed out if you lose. Like Aaron Rodgers, he wants to take his ball and go home now because he didn't win the playoffs. And so it's like, I don't get sports at all, because it's so temporary and it doesn't mean anything. But the hankering lamentation is like a sport, because you get the ball and you're hankering for something. When you achieve it, you're so joyful, but then when you lose it, then you're lamenting. And all this is related to the body. But a Kṛṣṇa conscious person, because he only wants what Krishna wants, he is not attached to anything that it is related to the body. Just like Krishna's sons, like Pradyumna or Aniruddha, all these, he had a lot of kids. He had like 10 sons for every single wife that he had. So, like 16,000 wives, do the math, But, his sons were so attached to what Krishna wanted that whatever whatever Krishna told them to do, they would do it joyfully. Even if they didn't like to do it, they would do it anyway. And if he asked them to give up something that they didn't want, that they wanted, they would do that as well. So it doesn't depend on our own, hankering or lamentation or in relation to the body. It's what Krishna wants. And when you actually understand what Krishna wants and act accordingly and do what he wants and give up certain things that he doesn't want us to have and accept something we may not want, but for his sake, we do that. That's called sacrifice. And that's what endears us to Krishna. It's like the gopis, they gave up everything. They gave up their families, they gave up their chastity, they gave up their religious principles, and they came to Krishna in the middle of the night, and they, not caring for any of their elders or anything like that, because they just wanted to please Krishna. So that is why Krishna said to them, I can never repay you for the sacrifice that you've given me. I don't have the power, so you're just going to have to be satisfied with your own pious activities. That's how much. I mean, he's God. He could repay anyone with anything, but Krishna can't even repay his dearest devotees, because nothing is greater than that in Krishna's eyes. So that kind of sacrifice, that selfless sacrifice, when we don't care what we want, what we don't want, just it's, whatever Krishna wants to do that, then we're actually, we become endearing to Krishna himself. And that way we can actually develop a relationship with Krishna and become more and more confidential in our service. So we're going to have to leave it there, as they say on the news. I will have to leave it there. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll talk to you on Friday.
Right.
Today's hump day, right? Yeah. Sometimes I forget what day it is, because all these days blend together, because I'm not really working.
Yeah.
Talk to you later. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.